Deep in the heart of McLean, Virginia lies the 5th richest family in the world, except we barely know anything about them. This is the family behind some of the most iconic candy brands we all grew up eating as kids. Skittles, Three Musketeers, M&M's, Milky Way, Dove Chocolate, Lifesavers, Juicy Fruit, all these other ones. This one single family controls almost all the candy you see in your grocery store. But that's not all. They don't just feed humans. They also control all the terrible pet food on the market as well. Pedigree, IAMS, and all these other brands. And they also happen to conveniently own the most veterinary clinics in the world as well. The same family happens to both sell all the terrible pet food that gets pets sick, while also owning all the pet hospitals they end up going to? Interesting. More on this later. You most likely have some of the products in your house right now, which is why they make over $50 billion a year. To put that into perspective, if you combine the revenue of Airbnb, Lyft, Zoom, Burger King, and Taco Bell, it would still be less than half of what this family brought in. This family is bigger and more powerful than Coca-Cola. And here's the thing, you probably have heard of their name before, but you probably don't know anything about them. That's because this family has intentionally stayed very secretive. They never do interviews, they're never in the spotlight, you would never recognize them walking in the streets, the public knows practically nothing about them. This family has done everything in their power to fly under the radar, and for good reason. When you're actually poisoning the entire population of both humans and dogs with your food products, you would probably want to stay under the radar as well. So stay dangerous, subscribe for more, and this is the truth about the Mars family. It's okay if you didn't know this about pet food or vets, because we sure didn't with our dogs. But from now on, you want to make sure you're only feeding them quality meat at home if you want them to live healthy and long. But if you don't have time to do that yourself, then you want to check out Sundays, today's sponsor. Sundays takes human-grade ingredients like USDA beef, chicken liver, egg yolk, ground bone, and much more, with 90% of it being real meat and 10% being other natural foods. Then they air dry it to lock in nutrients and flavor, and then they ship it to your door with free 3-day shipping. And then you just feed it to your dog. No prep required, and because it's actual food, your dogs are gonna love it just like my family's dogs do. Sundays has thousands of positive reviews on independent places like Reddit because it's actual tasty food. And the best part is that you can get 50% off your order with code JakeTran when you pause the video right now and click the link below. Sundays does contain sunflower oil in its beef recipe, which is not ideal, so I recommend their chicken and turkey recipes, which do not have sunflower oil. All their recipes also contain mixed tocopherols, which is a natural form of vitamin E that acts as a preservative. It's considered much safer than the artificial preservatives found in most dry dog food. Again, the best food you can give your dog will always be fresh organic meats. But if that's not practical for you, Sundays is the next best thing. So get 50% off your order with code JakeTran with the link below. Now back to the video. Secrecy has always been a trademark of the Mars family, and that tradition all started with its patriarch, Franklin Mars, the founder of Mars Inc. Before becoming the Candy King of America, Franklin had a really rough origin story. When he was just a young child, he was diagnosed with polio, and soon he was unable to walk or attend school. Since he was going to be stuck at home all the time, his mother Elva decided to provide him with a different type of education in their family kitchen. She taught young Franklin the art of hand-dipping chocolate and candy making, and he was immediately hooked. Little did Elva know that these little lessons would be the inspiration for one of America's biggest candy brands ever. By the time he was a teenager, Franklin recovered from his health issues and returned to high school. However, he knew that his body wouldn't be capable of doing a physically demanding job, so if he wanted to make money, he would have to use his wits. So after graduating from high school, he decided to take his childhood passion and turn it into a career by becoming a candy salesman. Because at least convincing people to buy candy wouldn't put a lot of strain on his body. But things weren't going to be simple as he hoped. Other candy brands like Hershey's were already cornering the markets, and quickly his first attempt at breaking into the candy game failed. He tried again. This time he tried making candy from his kitchen to sell, but once again he failed. This happened over and over again until Franklin filed for bankruptcy 3 separate times and lost his house all in just a few years. But he didn't give up though. Him and his wife scraped together the last $400 to attempt to make a successful candy company once more. They were so poor by this point that they barely had enough to buy the ingredients. But this time was different. He created a buttercream candy called a Maro bar, and it worked. People started buying. But it wasn't until 1923 that Franklin found his big payday.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
William.
William who?
William ever use artificial ingredients in bars from Mars?
Artificial? Never! Artificial is a nasty word at Mars.
Everything's for real in bars from Mars. Milky Way bars, for instance, are made the Milky Way with gallons and gallons of fresh whole-grade A milk, fluffy whites from fresh eggs, not powdered ones, and real milk chocolate, the world's finest.
The Milky Way, a chewy nougat and caramel-filled candy coated in a thin layer of chocolates. The story goes that the idea for this revolutionary chocolate bar came up when Franklin was having milkshakes with his son Forrest Mars. Allegedly, Forrest said to his dad, "Why don't we try putting a milkshake in a candy bar?" end quotes. And the rest was history. It flew off the shelves. People were obsessed with the Milky Way bar. By the end of the year, the Mars company earned $800,000 in profit, which is already insane on its own, but it's even crazier when you realize that that is over $14 million today if you account for inflation. The Milky Way bar had gone viral. Soon they launched another iconic candy that would stand the test of time.
Around 2:30, I've really gotten hungry, and I need something, and that something is a Snickers bar.
Satisfying. I didn't realize people like Snickers as much as I do.
Incredible.
Terrific.
It's so satisfying.
Snickers is packed with peanuts.
Peanuts and peanut butter nougat, caramel and milk chocolate.
It's chewy. It's not gooey.
Packed with peanuts, Snickers really satisfies.
I feel good about what I'm eating.
It was the Great Depression and businesses were going under left and right, but not Mars. I guess in times of struggle, what more could you ask for than a sweet, cheap candy bar to take your mind off of things? So while Americans were struggling to survive, Mars was catapulted into the millionaire class, and it was only the beginning, because Franklin's son Forrest Mars was about to take the company to the next level. Franklin the patriarch was genuinely obsessed with candy. He was the real-life Willy Wonka. He lived and breathed candy making and absolutely loved coming up with new ideas to get people hooked on their sweets. He was the candy Mars, but his son Forrest, he was the business Mars. And he made it his mission to make Mars Inc. one of the most powerful companies in the world. From the beginning, Forrest was into making money. In college, he made a deal with the campus cafeteria that he could keep any money he managed to save on the food service. He ended up earning $100 a week, or over $1,800 a day, and started being called the richest kid in Berkeley. But the truth was, he wasn't really interested in his dad's business at first. He just didn't think that there was that much money to be made in candy. But once he saw how popular the Milky Way bar became, he knew he had to get involved. But the thing was that Forrest and his dad didn't have that traditional father-son bond. They didn't really get along with each other at all. Things got so bad between them that Forrest decided to put an ocean between them by moving to Europe. While he was in Europe, he started doing research into what types of confections Europeans liked. After all, Americans and Europeans didn't have the same taste in candy, which eventually led him to create the British version of the Milky Way bar.
Weigh it up. What else gives you such value? Mars, with all the goodness of milk, glucose, sugar, and thick chocolate. Big bar enjoyment and big bar value. Weigh it up.
A Mars a day helps you work, rest, and play.
And it was an instant success. Soon the Mars bar was the best-selling candy outside of the United States, and all of a sudden, Mars Inc. had just gone international. But just as they were going international, tragedy struck when Franklin Mars died from a heart attack at age 50. He left behind a $3 million fortune, or $54 million today, and he also left behind one of the biggest candy companies on Earth. Now Mars needed a new leader, and Forrest was ready. But there was a problem. Their biggest competitor started dominating the US candy markets.
Hershey is
real milk chocolate, I love that Hershey bar.
Hershey is that's something special no matter where you are. Anytime you want delicious chocolate, there's no need to go looking very far.
Hershey's great.
'Cause Hershey is the great American chocolate bar.
Mars needed a new candy fast to rival the Hershey bar. And as delicious as chocolate bars were, they also had some serious issues. Air conditioning wasn't invented yet, so any chocolate candy would just melt all over your hands. Stores would even stop selling candy during the summer because they just wouldn't hold up on the shelves. But Forrest found a solution to that in England, and it was all thanks to a little-known candy brand called Smarties. These little chocolate pieces were coated in a hard candy shell that didn't melt the moment you touched it. It was brilliant. He had already turned an American candy into a British success. Now he was going to do the same thing in reverse.
I'm an M&M's plain chocolate center.
And I'm a roasted peanut.
And he's the M&M's candies man.
Who dunks M&M's?
Who dunks M&M's?
In chocolate, take a guess.
In chocolate, can you guess?
Who covers them in candy?
So there is no chocolate mess.
The M&M's man.
The M&M's man. The M&M's man. And he adds a lot of love to make it all taste good.
The milk chocolate melts in your mouth, not in your hand.
And once again, it was a massive success. Even during World War II, when most businesses were tanking, Forrest used the war to his advantage. He pushed the candies to the US military. saying how the soldiers could have something sweet in the battlefield that wouldn't melt during transit or in warm climates. It blew up so much that Forrest decided to memorialize himself on each and every M&M produced. Yeah, that M on every piece of M&M you eat, that doesn't stand for M&Ms, it stands for Mars. To this day, at least up until the War on Terror, M&Ms are still found in the US military food rations for soldiers. But Mars wasn't just controlling the candy markets. They were also starting to get involved in all different types of industries. They produced a new instant-ready rice called Uncle Ben's.
Introducing rice and gravy in the same box. Uncle Ben's new 5-minute rice and gravy.
Then they came out with a chewable dessert in the form of Hubba Bubba gum.
There's a brand new bubble gum in town named Hubba Bubba. It's soft, juicy, and delicious. Best of all, Hubba Bubba lets you blow great, big, fat bubbles that won't stick to your face.
And soon they were selling other types of minty gum to keep your breath fresh too.
Double great feeling, making you realize double is the one for you. Double fresh.
And all these brands were making Forrest Mars very, very rich. He had cracked the code to making money with food products. By now, he had turned his father's multi-million-dollar candy company into a $14 billion snacking empire. Fortune magazine called him one of the century's most brilliant and successful entrepreneurs. And yet, he intentionally kept his family completely anonymous to the public. But every titan's time eventually comes, and when Forrest's time finally came, he wanted to make sure his kids kept the empire growing. Forrest had 3 kids to pass the billion-dollar family business to: Forrest Jr., John, and Jacqueline. And he wanted to make sure that they were going to keep things running like he did. Forrest was extremely strict about how they ran their business. He had high expectations for the Mars employees, but he also paid them well for it. And he was even harder on his 2 sons. Forrest drilled into the kids' heads that as a family with so much money and power, they needed to keep a low profile, lest they wanted the vultures to come after the family. A lesson we can all learn from. So after Forrest Sr. passed away in 1999, they followed his advice. They continued to grow Mars Inc. at a steady pace by releasing new variations of their popular candies and other products. But this 3rd generation of Mars didn't want to rock the boat. Their predecessors had left them a well-run billion-dollar enterprise, and they didn't want to mess it up by reinventing the wheel. And that instinct served them well. Today, the modern-day Mars family is worth $94 billion. They're the 3rd richest family in the US and the 5th richest family in the world. If you put all the wealth of Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Kim Kardashian, and LeBron James together, it will still be less than 5% of how much wealth the Mars family has right now. They have 5 times more wealth than the GDP of Fiji. But none of you will recognize their faces. Both Forrest Jr. and John have done everything in their power to stay out of the public eye. If you Google Forrest Jr. Mars, there's only something like 12 pictures of him out there. They don't own big fancy properties or sports cars. They've just mastered the art of fading into the background. As of 2008, both brothers reside in Wyoming, a popular spot for billionaires who want to go unnoticed by the masses. Back then, Forbes sent journalists to the town they lived in to try and find the candy heirs themselves, but they couldn't get in touch with them. One of the locals around the area said, quote, "I seen him but never spoke with him. He's one of those guys that believe that silence is sometimes the best answer," end quotes. And that's just the way they like it. Quote, "The Mars company and the family that owns the candy giant have turned secrecy into a way of life," end quotes, one magazine said. Another publication called Mars Inc. a very, very quiet company, and there are many good reasons for them to be quiet. With a company as big as Mars, where their food products are made with a ton of toxic ingredients, there's bound to be a couple of fumbles here and there, and the candy empire is no stranger to recalls. In 2022, metal strands were found in some of their candies.
New this morning, a variety of Starburst, Skittles, and Lifesaver gummies are now under recall. Mars Wrigley says the candies could have a thin metal strand inside of them or loose in the bag. Right now, there are no reports of any injuries, and we have the full list of affected products up right now on kdka.com.
In 2017, they had to recall a few brands of their chocolates after it was discovered that they probably had salmonella in them. Another time, they had to recall a bunch of their dog food because it was also contaminated with salmonella. And that wasn't the first time there was something sketchy going on with their dog food.
Pedigree pet food buyers have a bone to pick with the dog food company.
Thousands of customers claim they found metal, wire-like materials in the dog food.
A few years earlier, they recalled their sweets in 55 different countries when someone found plastic inside a Snickers bar when they went to take a bite.
Mars is recalling candy bars in 55 countries after plastic was found in a Snickers bar bought in Germany.
But to be fair, even though these accidents are horrible, when you're that big, these things are bound to happen at least sometimes. But when you look at the actual ingredients that are meant to go in their products, you'll realize that they're arguably way worse because people eat them without a second thought. You know all those bright rainbow-colored Mars candies that kids love?
Welcome the rainbow. Taste the rainbow.
Yeah, how do you think they produce those super bright colors? There aren't any natural ingredients that can get that bright. No, they have to use something called Yellow 6 or Sunset Yellow FCF. Cause you know an ingredient is going to be healthy for you when it's named a color with a number code after it. This is what gives candies like M&Ms and Skittles that vivid orange or yellow color that really catches the eye of kids and adults.
Well, most of us read food labels. I know I do. We look at the calories and the fat grams and the protein, but there is something else in food that parents especially need to look for.
We're talking about food dyes.
But the problem is, Yellow 6 has some really nasty side effects. Yellow 6, quote, may have an adverse effect on the activity and attention in children, end quotes.
Every year, 15 million pounds of artificial food dye is put into food, and a lot of those foods are marketed towards kids. You know, these dyes are they're linked to behavior problems in kids, ADHD, even autism. And, you know, I used to think food dye, that's just food dye. It's not good, it's not bad, but I've really seen a big link with diseases in my kids, my patients, allergies, other inflammatory diseases, behavior problems. It's a big problem.
One study found that dyes like Yellow 6 in food can make hyperactivity worse in children with ADHD. And keep in mind, Yellow 6 is just one of the artificial food dyes commonly used by companies like Mars. And all of them have terrible side effects like this. I wonder why ADHD keeps rising at the same time Mars's revenue is rising. Could the rise in ADHD be correlated with the rise in ultra-processed foods like Mars? This Yellow 6 stuff is so bad that European countries require that products containing these food dyes come with a warning on the packaging, quote, may have an adverse effect on activity and attention on children. Kinda like the Surgeon General's warning on cigarettes.
What is the real issue at play here?
Well, there's some newer research, and in fact in Europe they now have warning labels on the foods that contain dyes that say that they may have an adverse effect on activity and attention in children.
And this is just one side effect, by the way. Quote, industry-sponsored animal tests indicate that this dye, the third most widely used, causes tumors of the adrenal gland and kidney, end quotes. Even though many other countries make colorful snacks without poisonous Yellow 6, in some places they even replace this coloring agent with paprika extracts in things like Cheetos, Mars refuses to do any of this. To this day, all their colorful products in America are made using these dangerous food dyes. And keep in mind, food dyes are just one of the many bad ingredients they're feeding us. There are many other ingredients that are just as toxic as this that we don't have time to cover in this video. But if you think the stuff they put in their human food is bad, just wait until you hear how indescribably bad their pet food is. Right after his father passed away, Forrest bought his first dog food brand in the UK. Soon after, the company started buying up cat food companies too.
Puppies have very specific nutritional needs.
What do dogs respond to? The taste of meat.
He needs the high-quality protein found in meat.
Cat love. Get more with Whiskas, the highest level of protein.
Plenty of grain-inclusive foods can make your dog feel full.
Keep their teeth clean and breath fresh this holiday season with Greenie's Dental Treats.
Every single one of these brands is made by the Mars family. Just like candy, it's difficult to find anything in the pet store that Mars isn't behind. But why? Why would you want to get into pet food? Well, if you think about it, pet food is the perfect industry. Pet owners love their pets, pet owners are completely ignorant as to what to feed their pet, and there are practically zero regulations when it comes to pet food. That means you can jam in the most disgustingly cheap ingredients, if you can even call them ingredients, into your pet food, slap a bold claim like it's made for healthy joints even though it's absolutely terrible for pets, charge an insane markup for it, and pet owners will gladly buy. And when we say disgustingly cheap ingredients, we mean disgustingly cheap ingredients, like horse meat. No, seriously, when dog food first hit the market, it was made from horse carcasses because it was so much cheaper than using something like steak. When the horses were no longer an option, they started designing the holy grail of cheap dog food, kibbles. This cereal for pets was perfect for producers like Mars because it lasted forever on the shelf and it was super cheap to make. The best part was that they only needed to include the tiniest bit of meat in the recipe, and they could legally put that it was made with real beef or real chicken on the packaging. And the teeny percentage of meat that actually goes in there, yeah, it's most likely made with animal byproducts. What is animal byproduct, you may ask? Animal byproduct is a delectable meal consisting of everything from the zoo animals to euthanized pets to old slaughterhouse scraps, feathers, beaks, tumors, and hide. It is the grossest, most dangerous possible stuff you could ever feed your pets. And yet, that's what millions of pet owners are fooled into doing. Since not even Mars knows exactly what's going on with these ingredients, anything can end up there.
They look like little black and white hair pieces, but it's actually really coarse and it feels like plastic.
Dog owners are looking for answers after finding what they say looks like wire in their pedigree dog food.
But as you can imagine, this infected mystery meat costs next to nothing for the manufacturer, so they're gonna tell you that it has all the nutrients your pet needs. And to finish off the rest of the kibble, it's packed with nasty old grains that are usually used by farmers to feed their livestock, even though animals like dogs and cats are supposed to be living off of mostly meat.
A lot of dogs and cats get cancer from dog food. The kind of food like dry kibble, not all of it, I don't want to disparage all of it, but a lot of dry kibble is just not good for them. What's in there? Is in there.
Pet owners all over America have been duped into thinking that they're doing the responsible thing by feeding their pets certified pet food, when in reality, they are slowly killing their furry friend while making the Mars family rich.
The FDA issuing a warning letter to a dog food manufacturer after hundreds of pets fall ill or even died after eating dry dog food.
The Mars family probably knew how terrible their pet food was from the very beginning. So eventually they probably thought to themselves, our pet food is making pets sick. These pet owners are all eventually gonna have to take their pets to the vet for cancer and stuff. I know what to do. Why don't we buy up all the vet clinics too? Allegedly, of course. Being the largest pet food company in the world was making Mars a fortune, but it wasn't enough. They wanted more. So over the past few years, Mars has been buying up vet offices and vet supply companies.
You may know it as the maker of M&Ms and Snickers, but Mars Incorporated now makes more money off your pet. The candy giant announced Monday that it spent nearly $8 billion to acquire VCA, a vast network of veterinary hospitals and doggy daycares.
And now, they have a monopoly here too. They're already the largest private veterinary provider in the US. Which is great because now, pet owners see their Mars pet food commercials everywhere. They feed their pets with it, their pets get sick, they bring their pets into the Mars vets, the vet uses Mars vet supplies on their pets, and the vets have been trained to recommend specialty Mars pet food blends. It's a never-ending cycle of cash. But when one company or one family is in control of the entire veterinary industry, it means that they can pretty much do whatever they want, including neglecting animal care and doing anything possible to increase their profits. One pet owner learned firsthand just how heartless this monopoly can be. When their dog started throwing up blood, they took their dog to a vet facility called Blue Pearl, which is owned by Mars. The receptionist said that they had to hold her credit card before they even looked at the dog, and that the service would likely cost around $1,800. The hospital ended up running 40 different tests on the pet, only for them to decide to put the dog down after 2 days. Instead of saving her dog's life, the vet office just gave her a bill for $5,000 and told her to be on her way. And that is a lot of pet owner stories after taking their dogs or cats to a vet owned by Mars. Vets are businesses, and Mars has mastered this business. And the scary part is that soon, there won't be any vet offices left that are not owned by the Mars family. And just like how American humans are getting fatter and sicker with every generation, even though there are more quote-unquote healthy options and more healthcare than ever, dogs are also getting fatter and sicker, even though there are more quote-unquote healthy dog food blends and vets than ever. And it's not just animals that are suffering or dying to make Mars money, it's also children. Making chocolate is more expensive than you think, especially when there's a huge candy empire like Mars that makes billions of units at a time. That's why they need to employ some creative solutions to bring down their costs, like using the cheapest labor possible. And what's cheaper than slavery? It turns out that Mars wasn't just using slaves to produce their coca, but child slaves in Ghana. An investigation by CNN found that kids as young as 5 were harvesting coca beans there. They were using machetes the same size as their little bodies in brutally hot conditions to try and extract the precious beans for America's favorite candies. Investigators even watched a boy almost slice his fingers off trying to open the coca pods with his machete. Mars gets a massive 140-pound bag of coca for just a little over $100 when they use child labor. Pretty cheap, right? And the crazy part is that it can take up to a year to harvest that much products. So if you didn't use child slaves, your chocolate bar would be costing much more than a few dollars. Mars keeps attention off of this issue by claiming to rescue children from these horrible situations. They say that they take kids off of coca plants and put them in school. But it turns out that most of these children still end up working in coca fields. One 15-year-old girl, who had been working in the field since she was just 5 years old, was promised by Mars that she would be sent to school. However, they just gave her a backpack and some notebooks, and she never heard from them again. It's great for Mars because they can say that they're helping while still being able to turn a blind eye to where the coca is actually coming from. Of course, the company swears that they're trying to end child labor in the supply chain and that they promise they'll stop using kids by 2025, but the truth is that Mars can make as many hollow promises as this as they want because they are the ones in control. And let's be honest, what consumer wants to put up with expensive chocolates? Every single year, the Mars family and their company become bigger and bigger. First, they got everyone hooked on their toxic candies. Then they made sure every pet was eating their toxic pet food. Now they're buying up every vet office in America so that pet owners only have two options: give Mars more of your money or watch your pet die. And yeah, you probably knew none of this. That is the power of the Mars family. They've been able to conquer all of this without anyone even noticing. And now they've grown bigger than even Coca-Cola. And who knows what industry they'll take over next. And if you found this history of candy interesting, then you are going to be shocked by the history of salt. Yes, table salt. Although table salt is cheap and available everywhere today, for most of human history, salt was one of the most valuable resources out there, and it was an essential ingredient for conducting warfare. Salt was so important that it led to the rise and downfall of empires, from the Greeks to the Revolutionary War to helping the Union win the American Civil War. The history of the world is incomplete without the story of salt, and we expose it all in this new video on this new channel called Salt and Pepper Economics that you can watch right now by clicking the card on the screen. This is one of my students' channels, he absolutely killed it. The video is incredible, super proud, you're gonna love it, so click the card on the screen to watch now and subscribe.